interior, okay, exterior, interior, okay, good. So you don't have a joint here because using or. Rules number 2, the car mileage exceeds 150. Okay. The car engine is noisy. Okay, so join together. Okay, then you give overall is poor. Okay, and the last one. Rule number 3, the car service doesn't follow the maintenance and the overall condition. Okay, very good. Simple. Okay, so if you have this kind of question, make sure that you score also lah. You just need to identify the conditions and also the conclusions. Okay, very good. So last one will be the frames. Frame is about the same like the you build the class, the class diagram using the what Java. Have you learned about Java, the class? Or what?
Object oriented.
Object oriented. Then you build the class object. Yeah, it's about the same like that one. I didn't learn, so I don't know how it looks like, but I know that it's about the same. You have a class here. So the purpose of the frames is mainly used to represent the properties or attributes. Okay, properties or the attributes of one concept of one object. Okay, so this is the example of how the frame works. So remember, to build the frames, there are 3 important elements you have to include. The first one is the class name. Here is a computer, so this is the name of this class, so you have to indicate here. The second element is the attribute, the properties. Okay, the third element here is the value. Here is the value. If you don't have the value, you can just actually leave it blank. Okay, you don't have a value, you can just leave it blank. And in this case here, we know that you have a class or superclass called computer, and we know that computer, you have a stereotype of attributes called models, processor, memory, price, and you have an arrow to show a relationship. Okay, ASUS is just one of the so-called examples of the computer. Okay, so ASUS, the superclass of ASUS is computer, and then you have you can actually put the so-called value. Okay, what are the properties for the ASUS? So what is the advantages for the frames here? It's more structures and organized, and you can't actually use the semantic network to represent this. Can, but it will be very messy. Try to imagine that how are we going to convert this computer to the ASUS. Then you will have a lot of nodes here. You have a computer. Okay, then you join to the ASUS. Okay, then you have a lot of properties. Okay, and then computer, you have also the on properties, the default properties. What if let's say computer, you have events? Okay, this is just one of the examples. You have other brands, right? Then your map will be very big, and it is not suitable to use frame to represent the to use a semantic network to represent the attributes or the characteristic. Okay, so what is the advantage here? Is more structured, organized. To represent a stereotype object. What is stereotypes? Do you know what's the meaning of stereotypes? Stereotype means what? Means it's the typical properties. Like when I say a female, so what is the properties that first come in your mind? Female, long hair, stereotype. I don't mean that short hair is not like female, but I mean the stereotype, the first the ideas that come into the mind when I say what is the properties of female. Then you say, okay, long hair, wear skirt, okay, a sweet smile. This is the stereotype properties. Okay, typical one, typical ones. Okay, describe various attributes and characteristics of object and real-world entity. So implicit connections of information in the problem domains. Okay, it's not only to show the properties, but it's also show the inheritance, right? This ASUS is actually inherit from the property from the computer. Okay, so remember you have 3 elements: the name of class, the attributes, and also the values. Okay, so let's say this case, Another example, you have a birds, right? So birds is actually what is the properties? Have a feathers, locomotions, can fly. Okay, and then you have an ostrich. So you can put a is a means that we know that this frame, this is actually one frame. Ostrich is actually a subclass to a bird. So bird is a superclass. Ostrich is a subclass, and the locomotions walks. Okay, mammals, walk, hair, locomotion, walk. So this is another so-called class here. So if you compare to the Java, you want to create so-called subclass, then you use extend, right? You use extend here. So if you want to create an instance or examples in the Java, you use a keyword called new. If you still remember lah. Okay, so it's about the same. It's about the same. It's mainly used to represent the properties. If you're very good or if you learn about the Java, then so that be a problem for you to build the frames. Okay, so this is another example. So yeah, computers. This is not an example, same like previous one. So you can actually further extend the class the frames previously into this format where you add two more informations. The first one is called data types, right? So you want to show what is the data type for this value, then you can include. Okay, so this is actually a string. 2 is actually a number, numeric, then you can put an n here. So 1 billion is actually a numeric, then you can put an n here. So this is just an additional information. It's optional. You don't put also never mind actually. Okay, the second information that you can put inside a frame is called a facet. Okay, so facet here is to add the information. So what is the meaning of these two? What is the meaning for this 1 billion here? So default here, it means that when this bird borns, right? So we know that by default it has 2 wings. So what is initial means that this initial means that at this moment you have 1 billion populations of the so-called the bird. Maybe after 10 years it reduced to maybe 1 million. So the value can be changed. Okay, but the default cannot be changed. We know that by default human we have 2 legs, 2 hands. But initial means that the population maybe after 5 years the population of human in Malaysia maybe reduced from 1 million to maybe 5 million. Initial is a value that can change. Okay, but again it's optional that you want to put the data types or you want to put the facet. Okay, it's up to you, but the 3 elements that you must include will be the class name, the attributes, and also the value. Okay, so what is the disadvantages of frames? It is very difficult to program, especially making inference. Unlike the so-called the semantic network, is easy to make inference, right? What is the Simon just now? Simon has no. So look at the map, then you know that what are the properties that Simon has. But by having this frame, is very difficult to make inference. So this is one of the examples that I can create the frames in the Python. Okay, I'm going to show you one example here. So not this one. Okay, this one. Okay, so I create a class called car frames. Okay, so this is the name of a class, and then I have a so-called the attributes, right? Manufacturers, models, year, colors, engine size, and then none here is means I don't have any value at this moment. So I just put a none. So this none here is referred to the value lah. Okay, so you have a class name, attributes, and also the so-called values, and then I create the instance, car instance. So this is just one of the examples. So this car instance is inherit from the superclass called car frames, and then under the car instance I have this so-called attributes. Then I can insert the value. So this example of this car is actually a Toyota Camry from 2022. The color is blue and so forth. Okay. So compared to the semantic network, it's more organized, it's structured, but it is very difficult to make the inference compared to the semantics. Okay, and also the limited not suitable to describe the sequence of event. Okay, so unlike the semantic network, just now what I say is like you have some battles, right? Battle in the game. So you have a game here, then it can show you have a battles. You want to fight with the boss. Okay, after you fight with the boss, then you have a reward here. Okay, so what is the reward? Maybe some coins, 1 million coins here. So you can show the sequence of the event in semantic networks, but it's impossible that you represent this knowledge using frames. So how can you represent the sequence of the event using frames? It's impossible. Okay, and also non-description on syntax semantic of a sentence. Okay, so this is one of the main problems for the frames here. So what is the syntax or semantics ambiguities in sentence? Okay, for example, in this case, I use a semantic networks here. If I have a bank here, I have a keyword called bank. So I know that the bank can have a multiple meanings. So this is maybe finance. So maybe this is called a river bank. Okay, then I can further expand. Okay, what is the meaning of finance bank? You have a Maybank here and here. What's the river banks? But using a frames is impossible. You can't represent this semantic so-called ambiguity using a frames. It is possible. Okay, incomplete informations. So just now we have learned about a semantic network. We can use a partition semantic network to show the or, okay, and okay, some or dot but or postmate, right? You can draw a semantic networks here, okay, then you can put this or. But using frames again, you can't represent these informations. You cannot. Okay, so it depends on your questions. Then you decide which technique to use. Not all the information can be represented by the semantic networks, as same goes to the frames. So it has to depends on the information. So what is the advantages of frames? Easy to understand, right? You have a frame, very organized. You have to deduce the properties of each of the objects, and it's very flexible. You can easily add the class. You can easily add the properties, or easily detect the missing values. Unlike the frame, another semantic networks, if you have a very big semantic network here, you may miss out one of the important maybe elements or the properties. But through the frames, you can easily spot the missing value or the missing properties. Okay, so yeah, I think this one you're better than me lah. Okay, so what is the facet? As I mentioned, facet is to add more information. So what is the value? It can be default or it can be the initial. Okay, like the case just now. Okay, so slot. What is the slot here? Slot is referred to this. Okay, so in slot you can do many things. You can put the value. Okay, if you don't have the value here, for example 1 billion 2, you can leave it blank. Okay, otherwise you can also add description. For example, in this case, if you don't have a value, you can also add a description for the particular attribute. For example, team. Team is a class, the cardinality. Okay, so you can also add the description here if you don't have any value. Okay, another one here is you can use the slot as one of the class. Okay, you can treat the attributes of one subclass as another class. For example, in this case, let's say you have a baseball team. So inside the baseball team, you have several properties like cardinality, team size, and managers. So this manager here, the property itself can be another subclass. Okay, then you can further analyze, further so-called describe what is manager. So manager is what? So you can put the names. Okay, you can put the numbers. You can put the location and so on and so forth. Okay, and then lastly is the daemons. So daemons is in the Java, it's called methods, right? Methods. So what is the purpose of these daemons here? So if you refer to the previous case, the value that we put here is so-called static. We cannot change the value, right? Once we define, then that is the value. So daemons here is used to dynamically modify the value if you have something happens. Okay, let's say now you have a new value that put inside the slot, then something will be triggered. So it seems like the methods. But for your information, you don't need to memorize the methods inside the frames here. It just show you some of the example. If added, if removed, if needed. Okay, so I'm going to show you the code, then how we can actually create the daemons inside the frames. Okay, in this case, let's say now we have a temperature. So this is actually a static value, Then we can create the so-called the methods, okay, or called as a daemons lah, okay, to modify the temperature, So this is the functions, a kind of functions where you can modify the current value to the latest value, or it's called daemon. It's a method. Okay, so if I run this code, so what will happen? So you can actually initially from 0. So now I have something happen. So I can actually modify the value from 0 to 25 degrees Celsius. Okay, so these are some of the examples what you can do on the slot. You can actually put the value. You can also put descriptions. You can also treat the properties as one of the subclass, or you can treat the attributes as a daemons, as a method. Also can. Okay. So let's continue. So sometimes you may need to convert or transform the semantic networks to the frame. For example, in this case, you have a semantic network. Player is a team. Ronaldo is the example of players. Players play football. Okay, so you have to convert this semantic network into the frames. So how to convert? It's very simple. You have to identify how many concepts they are actually joined with this keyword called is or instant. Okay, in this case, in this map here, you have 3 concepts: team, player, and Ronaldo. They are actually joined with this keyword instant and instant is then we can actually create 3 frames. Okay, team, player, and Ronaldo. Okay, so like this, team, player, and Ronaldo, they are actually connected with is and instant. Then we know that there are actually 3 frames. So after you create the 3 frames here, then you can put what is team? Team is actually a superclass. Okay, so what is player? Player is actually a subclass to a team. So what is the properties under the player? What is the properties of a player? Football. And then what is the properties of a Ronaldo? So it's a team Real Madrid, but I think this is an old slide. Ronaldo is no longer in Real Madrid. Where is it now? Do you know where is Ronaldo? Where is Ronaldo now? Saudi. I think it's not in the Europe country. It's go to Saudi, one of the football club. Okay. So how about this? So let's say now you have these semantic networks. So how to transform this semantic network to a frames? So as I mentioned, you have to identify how many concepts joined with is or instant. So from here we have bird, kernely, and tweety. Right, these 3 are actually a concept joined with the keyword is or instant. Then we can create 3 frames: bird, kernely, and tweety. Okay, so you can create bird, kernely, and tweety. So because we have 3 concept here, you can create 3 frames. So bird, bird is animals, right? So it's actually a superclass. You can actually, if you don't have the animal here, by right, this animals you can actually remove it. You can change to class. It's a superclass based on this semantic networks. Okay, and then the bird can fly and cover the feathers. Okay, so good. Right, you have a kernely. So you point here to show that there is a relationship between the bird and kernely. What is kernely? It's a subclass to a bird. It's a subclass to the bird. So what are the properties of kernely? Yellow and sound. Okay, and then the last one, you have a tweety. Tweety, what is the? Tweety is an example to the kernely. So what is the properties? Can talk. Okay, so this is how we transform the semantic network to the frame, but not often. Normally, we will represent the sequence of the events or the properties, okay, using the frames, or sequence of event using the semantic networks. Okay, so now let's look at this question back here. Can you try how to put this information or this knowledge using the frames? We have a university, is one of the top 20 universities, so it was established in the 1950. Okay, so it offers 6 programs as degree levels. Okay, as more than 45,000 of students, more than 10 countries, include international students, more than 10. Okay, can you try this using the frames to represent this whole paragraph? But in fact, this information is more suitable to be represented using semantic network. But somehow we still can represent this using a frame, so let's try. Okay. So what's your name already?
Why?
You lost
This is from Darren.
Darren. Point one student? Point one your best friends or
I don't have friend.
you don't have friends? Point one of your enemy?
That's how you choose her.
Huh?
She choose her.
Okay. Yeah. Jia he pointed you.
No, she choose anyone. I let her choose.
Oh, you let her choose. What is the relation between you and Jia Yi?
Class rep lah.
Oh, class rep. Okay.
No, don't. I am in relationship already.
Oh, okay. You so nervous, really.
你们那请喝椅子，有意思哦。幾喺度啊？印象粗暴啊！對。不要跟我咱去厕所。我有东西做哎。我有这么有名。
你去妈妈吃那个妈妈好吃，第一档，它是摆在华南水那排第一档。哦，你去麦当劳。MCMD。是你们就去吃了哦。是你们就吃了。怎么了？
还有必要吗？妈，自己一个人吃。眼泪从嘴巴出来了。
应该要拜五才可以有这空。这个礼拜要内卷，死命卷，疯狂内卷，躺在床上卷，睡觉。小三小给谁看的？让他一下，小三小给谁看？
这样是不用写啊？
啊？
还不写啊？
现在不写。你跟他讲，我是升级要写。升级完就大。我第一次懂WeChat。我来对面WeChat。我没有懂，因为只可以login，不是一个account。可以share account，电话也可以。现在可以了。
你看多少钱？
我大概全部错不错？
你要写没？你要说写，不要写，管他，做这就好了。 们要聪明点。这啥呀？这是坏事。
Okay, I'm not going to provide the oral pictures. As I mentioned, this is not a good example to use frame actually. But we can actually still represent this paragraph using a frames. So we know that we have a top 20 university, so it's actually a class. So you can actually put the default lah. So as I mentioned, slot here, if you don't have any value, you can just leave it blank. Okay. Then we show that it's a relationship. It's called college university. So this university is one of the examples from this frame. Inherit the properties from this top 20 university from here. So we know that establishment is about 1950, and then we can put all the descriptions and also the attributes. So you still have a number of student countries here. Then we can actually create another frames. As I mentioned, the one of the properties, for example, the program. This program, you have a 6 different type of program, right? So for example, engineering, ICT, accountants, business. So you can create another frames to represent each of these programs, right? You have a 6 program here. So if you have a value here, then you can actually put. But we don't have a value, so we just put it here. So this 6 program to show that there are actually subclubs under these programs. Okay. Right, is that clear? Okay, yeah. So, if not mistaken, there'll be one question that really coming up from here. Let me find whether I have I do keep the past questions. It's on the past year, so. This one simple. It just asks, okay, semantic and frames are commonly used. So explain the differences between the semantic network and the frames lah. Also provide one example to illustrate the semantic network and the frames. So in this case, you can just tell semantic network is more appropriate to represent the relationship or sequence of events. Meanwhile, frames is more towards like to show the properties, right? To show the properties and also the attributes. To provide examples, you can give a very simple example. For example, the Tweety is the bird, right? Tweety is the bird. So you just draw the concept as well as to join the concept and provide the relationship. So I want to give you some. This one, yeah. Okay, so this is another good example. The information below describe the differences between the desktop and laptop. So you have a knowledge, okay, for example, blah blah blah. So frame in semantic network are common representations. So identify which technique is more appropriate to represent this information. Explain why. After you explain why, then you have to illustrate. Okay, so we know that from here you will have a lot of properties actually, like battery, power supply, large, not portables, okay, more powerful processors. So all these are actually properties. Then you can explain why frame is more appropriate, because you have so-called the class, superclass, and as well as the properties to represent, right? There's no event at all. There's no event. There's no so-called the relationship. So it's mainly properties, right? Then you can use frame here. Then after that, you have to illustrate. You have to show how to draw the frames and store the informations inside. So since we have a time here, so can you try these questions? Okay. Jackson.
Michael
是 Ken 是吧？
I'm Ken
You are Ken.
我下一个是 Barbie。马来西亚的 Barbie。
Okay, Ken, give me one name. Your friends. Brian.
Brian
Okay, Brian. Yeah, Brian.
Brian Song
Brian Gunn。
来讲了
这是总的，是今天的。但是没是被骂。嗯。那行。那行，肯定的。Small, easy, portable. Small, easy, portable. Restaurant. Rush. 还有什么？面包是回去。回去也没跑过。我没去过。Only run manpower. 那都是回去跑更好。是什么 power processor？ desktop 还more power。一个是 more power， 一个是 desktop。那为什么？那下次的。有那么高吗？行，还是要换一个卡。 应该是画下来的，然后就是这个跟这个，然后还有一个叫古来到 S Predator，它的也就是
意思跟米来懂。我去写。
OK， 谢谢。要写。哦，要写，要写。
Yêu là nine marks, huh? It's quite a big portions. 9 plus 2, 11. So if you can score these questions, that means that half. Half. This one is chapter 6. This one chapter 6. Okay, thank you, Brian. Okay, so we have a computer, right? Computer is a class, super class. So these properties are you rather be specific lah? What is the properties? maybe in this case it's like common user. Okay, maybe I put a common user, and you can put a student. Okay, so laptop is generally small, so you have like two subclasses, which is a laptop and desktop. Okay, so it's a computer. Okay, so it's a superclass, it's a computer, it's a computer. Okay, so instead of put a properties, everything here, you give a name. Okay, maybe size. Okay, large. Okay, portability. Okay, portability, no. Okay, power, supply. Okay, so you have to give what is a processor. Okay, something like this. Okay, yeah, so it'll be easy to read other than you just put properties, everything's here. So you put like this. So in this case, laptop, okay, same goes to this one, size, portability, the power supply, the processor. Then you create another frames here is the Acer. So this is one of the example, right? One of the example. So you can put instant. This one you can put instant. So instant. So you put gaming laptop means that it's actually inherit from different frame. So you can actually put laptop also. You can put laptop. Then you can put one of the properties. Main purpose. Okay, it's a gaming. You can put also gaming laptop, but then if you have a gaming laptop, it means that in between these two frames, you have to create another frame which is gaming laptop. Okay, and then this inherit the gaming laptop. Otherwise, you want to inherit only the laptop, then you just put the gaming as one of the properties. Okay, then yeah. Okay, very good. So just some improvement. Alright. So it's very important you create the name, the class name here. Okay, so this is the first element, the name. The second one is the attribute. The attribute. The last one is the value. Okay. So you can actually refer more to more past year question. So yeah, due to the time constraints, so I just show you some. So now I hope that you have a better idea of why do we need to represent the knowledge, because before we do any codings, we have to represent the knowledge, easy for the machine for us to understand and do the codings. Okay, so we have 4 types. We have a semantic networks conceptual graph used to represent the events, the sequence of events used to represent the relationship. We use a frame to represent the properties, attributes, and last one we have an NO graph to represent the rules. Okay. All right. So any last question before we dismiss? No, then Brandon, I need your help to find the day, common day for everyone here to have a midterm test, either in the week 9 or week 10, after 6:30 to 8. So you see which day is free. Then you let me know. Okay. So let me know maybe by this week. You Google chat me or email Okay. Okay. So that's all for today. So thanks for your attention. See you next week.
那养它。你有钱吗？